Under her leadership, the Trust has garnered nearly $40 million in public-private investment in the waterfront and brought together an innovative and active community partnership of 140 communities, First Nations and NGOs. Awards include the David Crombie Urban Leadership Award in 2013, the Jessica Marlaine Partnership Award in 2016, and the OALA Service to Environment Award in 2016. Please give Marlaine a warm Shellback welcome again. She was here a number of years ago.
Thank you for a beautiful lunch and a great afternoon. It was pretty gray coming down here, but it's just, I love the words, the fellowship, the gratitude, a nice place to be. I have spent many years working on this initiative, and most of them, and as I was saying to Diane, my family's happy if I have any place else to tell this story, because it can't shut me up about talking about the trail or about the initiatives we've worked on. I started working on this, switch the slide over. For those of you who don't know the organization, it was started by David Crombie. He's our founder, and he continues to be very involved in the trail. He is on our board. He is such an incredible man of vision and able to convince anybody to get involved and do the right thing. And
which one is he?
He's the tiny perfect one.
Thank you.
And David Crombie, headed up a royal commission on this, on the work of the downtown Toronto waterfront that had become a point of contention, especially with all the development that was happening on the harbourfront lands. And I'll talk a little bit about it later. He headed up the commission, we became a provincial agency, and then the provincial agency was being wound up by the government of the day. And it would have been an easy thing for David Crombie to kind of walk away from it. Say, I wrote my reports, I consulted with the public, I consulted with the communities, and I've done my job, move on. But he is such an incredible person. He absolutely did not want to see that legacy, that work, that progress that was underway threatened. And so instead of walking away, he founded the Waterfront Regeneration Trust as a charity. And we've been a charity since 1999, working for the most part on the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. That's my little homage to him. Here is the vision for the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. The vision is really an expression of a commitment to use the trail as a way to connect the communities in a work to regenerate, to protect and restore the waterfront. I've got these 9 words on the bottom here. Those are the 9 waterfront principles that David Crombie published in Regeneration and in other subsequent reports. And those were the values of the waterfront that all the communities, the public, the hundreds of public that came and deputed before the Royal Commission said that they wanted to see the waterfront be clean, green, connected, affordable, open, diverse, attractive, usable, and accessible. And at the time, back in the 80s, the waterfront was really, people were turning their back on it. It wasn't a great place to be. In Hamilton, to me, is one of the great stories. They only had 5% of their waterfront that was publicly accessible. They have now nearly 85, close to 90% of that publicly accessible. And they have people using their waterfront, so when the contamination in the area prevents people from actually wading into the lake, they've actually got people, mothers, kids, who are complaining about that to the local government, and now affecting decisions, land use decisions, that are affecting investments and changing what is happening to our waterfront. So the Great Lakes Waterfront along Lake Ontario has gone through a tremendous transformation from the late 80s when David Crombie first started the work. So our division is a waterfront that contributes to the ecological, the community, and the economic health of all the communities that are connected by the waterfront. And the last paragraph, we envision a Great Lakes Waterfront Trail that is completely connected, an integral part of each ecosystem it passes through, enhancing the environment, the economy, society, and history of every community that participates in the development of and use of the trail. And in this way, it is a symbol of this incredible partnership of communities who each contribute what they can to that vision. It is a way for them to actually work together, because partnership is better when you actually have something on the ground you can point to. It is a benchmark of our progress towards this vision. How much of the trail is off-road? How close is it to the water's edge? How many communities have waterfront plans? And last, it is a way, a very tangible way for the public to interact with the work, to come to love the waterfront, to get a kind of inspiration about getting involved in the processes that will affect the decisions to make it, improve it, and make it better. And of course, when we talk about the Great Lakes, we include the St. Lawrence River in that as well. So here's the evolution of the organization. David Crombie started off as the Royal Commission on the Future of the Toronto Waterfront. He had both a federal and provincial mandate in the public hearings, and we issued over 89 reports, 89 recommendations in that final report. I actually was hired by the Royal Commission, so that's how long I've been committed to this project and working with David on it. Once the final report was tabled, the provincial government of the day established the trust, the Waterfront Regeneration Trust, as an agency to implement the recommendations. And chief among those recommendations was the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail and the Lake Ontario Greenways Strategy. And as I've mentioned, in 1999, the government of that day said, time to wrap it up. The work is great, but it should continue as a charity. And for many people, they thought that was going to be the demise of the whole thing. But instead, David Crombie assembled an incredible small group of leaders, established a board, and created it as a charity. And we went back to the community partners and we found out, well, what is it that we need to focus on? Because we are not an agency, we don't have those resources available to us anymore. What do we need to focus on? And it was the trail. Because all that ecological work, there were conservation authorities, there were official planning processes, there were people in whose capable hands you could put that work. But the trail was the thing that would wither and disappear if it didn't have an organization continually working on it, continually making sure that the connections were established, seizing the opportunities that became available. And in fact, in 2014, we went back to our Waterfront Trail partners. We had a trail that was now included both Lake Ontario, the St. Lawrence River, and Lake Erie. And we asked them, what do we do? Do we wrap her up? Is this one of those things where you've done your job and it's time to call it a day? And they were stunned that we were even thinking about that. We had 86 communities participating in a trail-wide planning process. Took 2 years to consult in a variety of ways and develop a number of initiatives with them. But the overall endorsement was embrace an entire Great Lakes view of the trail. And so since 2014, the Trust has really been focused not only on the trail, but expanding it so that it is meaningfully a Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. The ecological impetus was overwhelmingly important. What became a dominating motivator for community partners and for the public was the public health implications of the trail. Our sedentary lifestyles were killing us, and it was quite incredible to find out that sitting was the new smoking, according to the World Health Organization. That we needed to get back out there, start walking, start cycling. In official plans, we talked about complete streets. And the Waterfront Trail was, for most of the communities on the waterfront, the anchor and the foundation upon which they could build their active transportation plans, because they already had a signed and mapped route in place. The other thing that happened post, I think I spoke here in 2012, so we were just completing the expansion on Lake Erie, is the cycle-on strategy. But 2015, the province announced that it was going to, after 20 years, establish a provincial cycling strategy. There hadn't been one forever. And getting this provincial cycling strategy in place, one key element of it was to create a province-wide cycling network. We were part of all those consultations and many of those stakeholder groups. And of course, one of the things that we were advocating for and wanting to make sure that the province of the day understood is all of our municipalities had committed substantially in creating a trail, and that this trail would make an excellent foundational piece for a provincial cycling network. And it was a no-brainer for them to look at it. And in fact, they released last year, this is the overall plan. You can tell that it was hard for them to make choices, but that line, that pink line that goes along the Great Lakes, that is entirely the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. And this document and this policy framework made it possible for us to initiate a number of significant expansions that otherwise would have been impossible. And just so that you can see the far north end in Western Ontario, the plan is really looking like it's going to follow Highway 17, which means that the Ministry of Transportation is going to have to adapt what it does within the highway right-of-way. It's a very exciting plan, and it's very, very needed. The smaller communities in the north and in rural Ontario really care about cycle tourism because it can make a dramatic impact to their local economies. So we see this as a really healthy plan, and we're hoping that it survives all the different changes in government. So here are the expansions. This is our new map of the Waterfront Trail. You can see it goes from Quebec, where it connects to Quebec's trail system, La Route Vert, in South Glengarry, and goes all the way, I don't know if you can see, Gros Cap, up by Sault Ste. Marie. That's just west of Sault Ste. Marie. In Gros Cap, that's where I was born in the Sioux, love Sault Ste. Marie, have family there, visit often. When you go to Gros Cap, that's where all the cyclists ride to. And you can dip your tire or wade your feet into Lake Superior when you were in Gros Cap. They've got this gorgeous set of bluffs up there. And the Trans-Canada Trail people were our partners in creating this latest expansion that I'll talk about. But what's neat about that trail is at Gros Cap, a wonderful woman named Joni McGuffin has created the Lake Superior Water Trail. It's part of the Trans-Canada Trail. It's part of their Blue Trail system. And the mechanism that they have, it's fully accessible so that you can launch a kayak or a canoe into the waters of Lake Superior at the Gros Cap Harbor there. It's absolutely an incredible piece of infrastructure at that location, and we're really hoping to work with Joni to make sure that cyclists have a destination to get to, a place where they can park their bike, and opportunities to rent or buy a trip and do some kayaking in Lake Superior at that end. The other expansion that we're working on most currently is Collingwood to Sudbury. That's taking us through towns of like through Simcoe County. We know that we can get up to Grundy Point Provincial Park. Beyond that, we've got some serious conversations which are ongoing with MTO as a result of the work that they're doing on Highway 69. And we just wrapped up the expansion of the trail in Huron County, which took us from Lakeshore on Lake St. Clair all the way up to Tobermory. And we're not always on the waterfront, but these are very beautiful, beautiful experiences. And smaller expansions are to Wolf Island, Frontenac Island, and Howe Island. I don't know if you've ever been to Kingston and gone to those islands. Both of them wanted to be part of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. We were still promoting them. They didn't have to be part of it, but we are thrilled to have now signed routes on both of those islands, and of course on Peely Island. The trail was also recognized as one of 5 trails in Ontario as a trail of distinction in our sesquicentennial year. This is my daughter, Leanne, who's now 19, and on one of our cycle trips. This is the Burlington Pier. Very contentious piece of development for the city of Burlington. Fantastic amenity. I remember when we were putting that bridge over the Humber River, and people thought it was too expensive, waste of time, and it's a beautiful landmark, wonderful amenity. At the end of the day, you never regret spending money to do something right, to make a true landmark, and I think Burlington did the right thing with this pier, and good for them for weathering all the difficulties and contention associated with it. So I've just on the margin there sort of captured what's connected by the Waterfront Trail. This is a park out in Tecumseh, and these are the cyclists that come with us on our annual trip. I'm telling you, you discover you're a kid again. We didn't ask them to do it, they just did it, and our photographer caught that moment. They recreated it when we went back and visited another time. And of course, this is out in the Sarnia area, but we have 83 conservation areas. 169 beaches are connected by this trail. And when you get up to Northern Ontario, most people wouldn't have a clue where those beaches are, but this trail will now begin to introduce them. And we're very thrilled to see that our communities are working with the Blue Flag program to get many of the beaches Blue Flag designated. We're also working with an organization called Swim, Drink, Fish Canada. They have created this incredible app called the Swim app. So you can go on their map and find any beach in the world, and you'll find out they gather the data on the local beach, the water testing, and in fact we give this app to our the people that ride with us, so that you can find out what the water quality is before you wade into the water. And
They spoke here.
oh, did they? Was it oh yes. Yes. So, and the other thing they're working on is the Great Lakes Guide, which of course the Waterfront Trail will be a feature of. And we have many, many, many connecting trails. And of course the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail is enhanced so much with every connection that we can establish into neighborhoods, into other regions. So we are definitely working on that. We've got many historic sites. We've got 3 major wine regions. We've got a load of heritage main streets that cyclists love to stop at. If there's bike parking in particular, you can park your bike. You want to go into the local bakery. You want to check out the local coffee shop. Just a fantastic experience, and really helpful for those communities to keep them vibrant. So the trail's now 3,000 kilometers. And if the legacy goal is a dedicated path that's close to the water's edge as ecologically feasible, we're about 17% towards that of the 3,000 kilometers. The bigger we get, the smaller that number gets. And about another 8% is on residential streets, where private ownership of the waterfront is going to make it very difficult, if ever, that we're going to be able to secure a water's edge trail. And that does not degrade the quality of the trail at all. Going through those communities and residential areas is some of the most scenic and enjoyable parts for people along the waterfront. We call them the desirable residential areas, or des-res. Oh, here's a des-res we want to move to. Just, it's terrific, the variety from cottages to big, almost old manor homes that are that you can see along the Waterfront Trail. And the more we go into Northern Ontario and into rural Ontario, we have secondary roads. And in Northern Ontario, we also have some provincial highway. I'll speak a bit about that later. But again, for a cyclist, for a hiker, going along that road is going to be a lot of fun. But for a cyclist, it is absolutely a pleasant experience. And we know that we have to use these connections with these secondary roads. In rural Ontario, if you don't, they don't have sidewalks, and you'll see mothers pushing strollers in the shoulders of roadways. The shoulders of the roadways are the active transportation infrastructure for many of those communities. And saying that it's no good if it isn't a dedicated, separated infrastructure from the roadway is unfeasible and unhelpful if we really want to encourage people to pursue active lifestyles. And I believe that very strongly. We have to use existing infrastructure. We have to remind people to be civil to each other, cyclists and motorists and walkers, all of us, to respect that there are other people using that same piece of infrastructure and do it safely and do it enjoyably. The wayfinding on the Waterfront Trail has now been updated to reflect that Great Lakes mandate, so you see we've inserted Great Lakes Waterfront Trail.
Thank you.
It only caused us trouble with the St. Lawrence River folk, who were not, it's funny because you make an assumption that, well, St. Lawrence River people think of themselves as the Great Lakes. Well, not all of them do. They see themselves as the St. Lawrence River people, and so they'd rather, in some cases, you'll still see the old signs that just say Waterfront Trail. The wayfinding, this is a pretty dark slide, so I apologize for that. We've got probably about 150 of these trailhead signs that we place out in various locations. This may seem boring to you about signs and placements. Mm-hmm.
Is Marlaine Koehler Trail, that's the Toronto area?
It is. And that all happens in many places along the waterfront, where there's a local designation or a local community-led leader that has been acknowledged with the trail. So in Scarborough, for example, most recently, when Councillor Ron Mosier passed, Mayor John Tory and Heather Moser unveiled that the section that was his old riding from Highland Creek to the boundary would be designated as the Ron Mosier Trail. But that doesn't change the fact that it's also part of the Great Trail, which is now, Trans-Canada Trail is now the Great Trail, and also the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. Thank you for that question. And the signage for the people that use the trail, we poll them, especially the ones that come with us on our annual trip. Signage is the number one. Signage is more important than being at the water's edge, because people don't want to get lost, and they want that clarity. So for us, getting the signs up, maintaining that signage program is like a promise we are making. And every time we get the communities to agree to put those signs up, they're engaged in that promise, that we're going to create a trail, we're going to maintain the trail, and the trail is part of a bigger picture. And so I'm very proud every time a sign goes by. And this sign is a brand new format. We adapted it so that it was fit more with the accessibility recommendations and requirements. And it also, in every region, we show about 30 to 40 kilometers of the trail, as well as showing the full provincial scope of the trail. And that is our hope, that taking people beyond the 5K walk that they do and showing them the full connections that are made will spark people's interest in traveling to other parts of the trail. We've also done a new website, and I was mentioning to Diane that I loved your website. It looks fantastic, and I think we're using kind of a similar template in WordPress. We've got a new website in place, and we've done a much better job of presenting the mapping. We use a custom Google-based map that will give people, geolocate people on the trail and help them find directions. We still have our old-fashioned map books, and we also have paper maps that you can download for free. As much as people use their phone to navigate when they go on a long trip, especially when they go on our long trip, they love the paper-based format maps is still the #1 preference. But that may change. These are just some more of the features of the interactive improved map. I'm just wondering here, how many people use Google Maps here to navigate to destinations? And how many of you have used the little Google map to drop onto the street and get a street view of where you're going? Yeah, okay. So I'm just curious because again, when we create this map, we're making assumptions that people are comfortable with this interface. And I was quite surprised when people call to learn that some people don't know about the Google map. And you drop the Google map. So I wanted to see if that was, if it's an exception.
And you can do DTC on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk a bit about our expansions on the trail. Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury, this is 380 kilometers. It is the first northern cycling route in place. And it had us for, it's not the first First Nation we worked with, but we worked with 3 First Nations to do sections of this. Garden River First Nation, Mississauga First Nation, and Serpent River First Nation. It was very interesting to sit down with the chief of Serpent River, who is Isadora Day, and hear his concerns and how much he wanted to be a part of the trail and the reasons why he wanted to be a part of the trail. Number 1, public health. Indigenous peoples have disproportionately high incidence of diabetes and other health-related issues. So he wanted to get his community active. And the second reason was, it's like Marlaine, I'm in a meeting with people and they say, yeah, Chief Day, I'd really like you to take me to a First Nation one day, a reserve. And he's like, you're in one. He says, people don't get that our First Nations communities, some of them are vibrant, terrific places to live. And he has a lovely First Nation, and it is a wonderful place to live. And so this year, when we do our tour, we're celebrating this expansion. We'll be visiting 3 of those First Nations. And we know that our cyclists really love the opportunity to learn about the Indigenous heritage. The other thing that was interesting about this section of trail, something new to us, there are not a lot of wineries or craft breweries. So that was a bit of what we thought, well, that's a major weakness in this route, because those areas always functions as staging grounds for the trail. But in the north, the marinas have opened their doors and welcomed the cyclists. The marinas are the wineries up north. They have Wi-Fi, they have showers, they have bathrooms, they have facilities. They'll let cyclists use the laundry. They want to be on the trail. They want to be promoted as trail friendly, and they have been a godsend for us in this particular expansion. And in fact, there's now a thing called cycle-friendly marinas. This is one of the Chutes Provincial Park is in Massey. It's just a stunning place to visit. The other expansion we did was Huron to Manitoulin Island, Espanola, and Collingwood. Again, what was significant here is originally the community wanted to see a cycle route around Georgian Bay, which would have meant that the route would have not been connected to the southern portion of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. The Great Lakes Waterfront Trail would have ended at Lakeshore, or actually ended at Grand Bend, and the Georgian Bay cycling route would have gone through Tobermory into Manitoulin Island. But we were able to convince the communities and the community leaders around the Georgian Bay cycling route that we needed to prioritize completing the Lake Huron from Grand Bend up to Tobermory as part of that route. And then we were also able to get it included as part of a provincial cycling network. It's really important because when you look at things like this Dodge in, it's because otherwise you're on Highway 21. And Highway 21 is still a long shot away from the waterfront. But the shoreline of Lake Huron, the geology of it, the erosion of it, the private property along it makes it very difficult to get to the water's edge. And so, while we're going to continue to work with the province to make sure there's a direct route and proper infrastructure on Highway 21, there's quite an extensive detour inland, which is gorgeous. It's farmland, it's hilly, it's beautiful. But if you're traveling a long distance, it may feel like an unnecessary ride.
So is the
What's already built?
Yes. The red is, if it's red, it's signed. It's signed and it's mapped as the Waterfront Trail. These are just some shots. I'm not sure about my timing here, so shots along the way. And, oh, I went backwards. Yes, I am. Sorry about that. We are currently working on Simcoe to Sudbury. So we have done a trail expansion of about 600 kilometers steadily since 2015. And it has been a very intense breakneck pace to go to these communities, introduce the idea, work with the staff, work with the local cycling volunteers to identify a route, get it mapped, and get it signed, and then begin to promote it. And what we are currently working on, which we hope to be open by 2020, is the connection between Collingwood up to Sudbury. And we are already getting calls from a lot of cyclists who generally come from the States and who find themselves stranded in Sudbury because they mistakenly thought they could come south using Highway 69 down to Toronto. And because Highway 69 is being four-laned and they started in Sudbury and they're coming down, great for those of us who are driving it, because I go up to this too. But they're not always, when they create new highway, it's awesome. But when they use old 69 as part of the four lane, it creates a major gap in the trail. One that we're not sure always how we're going to deal with. Now we do have a plan for this. By 2020 we can get to Grundy Provincial Park. And from Grundy Provincial Park into Sudbury proper, there are some opportunities within the highway rights of way that we can work with MTO. They would have to actually create the trail within those spots. But the connectivity is absolutely critical. And what's happening now is the Sudbury Cyclists Union are volunteering and driving those stranded cyclists down to Perry Sound or French River. The other thing that we did that we're super proud of is we started working with the Greenbelt Foundation, and the Waterfront Regeneration Trust took what we learned on Lake Erie and we created a cycling route for the Greenbelt route. And at the time, Burkhard Meisner, who is a CEO of the Greenbelt Foundation, called us into his office and basically said, what you did for Lake Erie, I want to see you do for the Greenbelt route. We have all of our signs. Greenbelt's love. People kind of know that they're on the Greenbelt route, but they need an anchor. And he recognized the role of a trail, of a cycling route that would link the communities and give people a very simple way to experience the Greenbelt. And we agreed to do it because David Crombie has a whole bunch of maps that show a bioregion approach to the trail network. And we saw this as working along the Oak Ridges Moraine Trail, the Ganaraska Trails, as achieving that bioregion network of trail systems. Little concerned about the current policy frameworks. Protected should mean protected. And we're hopeful that the municipalities that have bought into the Greenbelt route will stay strong and protect that incredible countryside. We're also working with the Greenbelt route currently to do north-south connections. In fact, there are 10 of them already in place and more to come.
Are there any, like if you go back to that map,
Sure.
are there any ways to come down through into Toronto itself?
The way that we expect to be able to come into Toronto will be the Etobicoke Creek Trail, and eventually the Lake to Lake Trail, which York Region has been working on, which would go from Lake Simcoe. It would eventually catch onto the Don Valley, to the Don River Trail system.
Okay.
So yeah, exactly.
But it's not there yet.
It's not there yet. It's not there yet. The Trail to Go program, a couple of years ago, the Waterfront Regeneration Trust started talking to Metrolinx about how we could make it possible for people to understand how they could use the Go on the weekends to travel to new sections of the Waterfront Trail. We go to the Red Path Waterfront Festival. I can't tell you, well, that festival is a busy festival, and it's proud, and everybody's pressed in, and what I hear is, I need a new place to explore. I've done Toronto as part of the Waterfront Trail. Where else can I go? And I want it to be dedicated off-trail, like I give you the characteristics. And they're quite surprised to find out Durham has, like Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, has fantastic, dedicated water's edge. There are beaches, there are amenities, a fantastic trail to enjoy. So does Hamilton, so does Burlington. And by reaching out, but how do they get there? How do they get back? It's linear. We talked to Metrolinx about the fact that we could use GO as the way that people could go out farther, leave Toronto, go all the way to Whitby, and take the GO back. And they don't have to commit to any length, because there were several places where if they knew how to get from the GO station to the trail, or they knew when to leave the trail to get to the GO station, they'd be able to make that looped ride. And so that's what this was. It took 168 signs to actually mark, when you get out of the Ajax GO station, you'll see a sign, that black sign, that'll tell you which exit to take in order to get to the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. And you'll see that wayfinding sign, these wayfinding signs, telling you whether you're going to the trail, how far you have to go to get there, or whether you're going to the GO station. And it's been an eye-opener for so many people, how close the GO is to the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. And on the Waterfront Trail, this isn't a very good picture of it, we have these big maps. So when you come to a junction area, you'll usually see a big map like this, and it'll tell you how far away you are from the next GO station, and give you a little inset map that shows you how you get there. But the routes are signed. And we're continuing to work with Metrolinx. The communities are desperate to be part of this program, and the public has loved it. It's really opened up 300 kilometers of Great Lakes Waterfront Trail to people in new, fresh areas.
Does Metrolinx advertise it on any of their?
No, that part's the sad part. They're helping us, but we're doing most of the promotion on it. And we've been trying to figure out how we can we did, when we first opened it, we did a little contest, and Metrolinx helped us with that, but on their social media. But it isn't, no, it's not.
Because that would be like the thing generate revenue for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they have signs, that allow you to take your bike, right?
Yes,
So
that's
this is
right.
for 2 bikes. And I guess it's just off peak, isn't it?
It's off peak and it's on the weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you get these posted in the trains?
That might be a good idea, just to have those available.
There are
But we
paper
have
maps.
a wonderful little brochure that we hand out. I didn't bring those here today, which is like a trifold. You open it up and you see all 13 connections there. It's super easy to figure out where you're, how to use the system. And then on our website, we have whole itineraries for people, and we show people exactly what it looks like and how to do it. So our connections, one that I'm super excited to share with you, the Waterfront Regeneration Trust works with Parks Canada. We have a fund of money that is dedicated to the protection and conservation of the Rouge Valley, and we've been working with the Rouge Valley Alliance for many years. One of the things the Alliance was working to was seeing the Rouge Park established as a national park. Is everybody familiar with the Rouge National Park? That's great to hear. It's incredible that this urban river valley is going to be, one of the largest national parks, certainly in North America, and it's a new designation. But the work that the Trust is going to be working on with Parks Canada and others is to create a trail from the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail up to the Glen Rouge Campground. It's the only camping that you can do within the city of Toronto. And we think it's just going to be a fantastic experience to take people up through that sensitive wetland. It's also going to protect the wetlands. It's going to manage the already incredible traffic down there. And we think it'll be a real showcase in ecological management and trail building.
Before you leave that slide, that beach is often closed though, because of water pollution. I guess it's the Rouge River.
It is
Coming
the
from the
Rouge
zoo?
River. Yeah, well, Mark would know that better than, or Matt would know that better than I do. Whenever I'm down there, I see a ton of people swimming in it. And it is a beautiful, beautiful beach area that people never knew
But
about.
if it rains, it is closed.
Yes, okay.
How protected are these routes from government encroachment and expropriation?
Well, most of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail is actually in public ownership. So there are only some places where expropriation has been used in order to achieve it. Like, for example, in Humber West Park, that old motel strip. I don't think there's a big appetite to do expropriating in any of these things for the trail projects. It's a very expensive way. It's a very contentious way to try and create trails. You know, there has been talk what's going to happen here.
I meant the other way, for the government to take back the land for development, for
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that. Yeah,
for
I don't know.
casinos.
Yes, I do have that as one of the. So another improvement. This is a little one, and the reason why I added it in here is this is in that top picture. This is people coming up a hill in Clarington. And the community leader, in a very kind of comedic, lighthearted way, put this sign up, which brought a smile to everybody's face, even as they had to dismount and plow up the hill, that they saw the sign. And he would use these pictures and use the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail Adventure as a reason to get the community to actually change it. And in 2014, the community finally had the money and the designs in place, and they eliminated that very steep, natural hill that it got very, that's not just slushy, but when the rain would sort of erode paths within the middle of it. And now we have this stunning little hill. It's Jim Boat and his wife Mary Boat, just such incredible people. And as is the rest of the team, working on making trail improvements in their own community. And here's an example in this large picture. I explained that we were on provincial highway in some places. When we created the trail between Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury, our #1 goal was to get cyclists off of Highway 17. That is no way to experience the north. It doesn't connect you to anything that's beautiful about the northern communities along there. But there were 5 places for a total of about 50 kilometers where it was impossible. There were no roads for us to use as an alternative. And instead of creating a gap, which would have made the whole exercise useless, we worked with MTO. We told them this is as few kilometers as we need, and they have created, they applied their own design guidelines, and this is the cycling infrastructure as you're leaving Espanola and heading in towards Sudbury. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this solid white line, a rumble strip, and then a broken line, and the cyclists are meant to be there. And in other places, it's just your standard, well, it's a double width shoulder, and the longest stretch of Highway 17 that we needed was about 22 kilometers. The next longest was about 12. And we don't take it lightly. There's truck traffic on there. It's not for everybody. It's not family friendly. But it is the beginning. And eventually, we're hoping, as has happened in other parts of the trail, there'll be opportunities and reason to improve the infrastructure, better separate it, find new ways to reroute it. But the participation by the Ministry of Transportation in this exercise was historic. And it was absolutely essential for us to be able to create a continuous route. And in this example, the Thousand Islands Parkway, this bottom one, they already had a dedicated trail that was going between Gananoque and Brockville. But in order to get to the trail in Gananoque, you had to cross a busy interchange. And in fact, some cyclists nearly went on the 401 if they were headed westbound because they were confused by the signage. We did a little community charrette at the Tim Hortons. we came up with the idea that the trail should be extended in the MTO right-of-way all the way past the interchange and all the way to the bike lanes that existed in on Highway 2. And they agreed, and they built it. And so for the first time this year, like the cyclists are so excited about it, they're getting off their bike, they're looking at it, and it's just a fantastic improvement to the trail infrastructure. And really, again, grateful to have MTO as part of the provincial cycling strategy. It allows them to do great stuff like this because there was a commitment to that strategy. And my last improvement that I wanted to showcase was, I grew up going to all those free concerts at Ontario Place when I was smaller, did all that children's village stuff, but the western area was always the no man's land, right? That's where all the admin buildings were, that's where the parking lot was. And it was the last government that actually transformed that into Trillium Park and named the trail after William Davis. It is stunning. How many of you had a chance to go down and check out Trillium Park? It is a magnificent piece of work of design. It also cost a lot of money because there was remediation that had to happen. They wanted to create a kind of bluff experience. There's landscaping work with all indigenous plants. They've got conifer and deciduous trees, and they've got this awesome fire pit. And it is a real tribute to maintaining that piece of waterfront land as publicly accessible, excellent design, and a great way to feel connected to the vibe of the province. And in the middle, there's of course David Crombie. This is now part of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail as well. A part of the trail is the Mississauga, with the Mississauga First Nations. They wanted to figure out a way that they could acknowledge the First Nation heritage of the area. And they came up with the moccasin identifier. And I had an opportunity to speak with Carolyn King, who came up with the idea. And the reason why they use the moccasin is because it's not a sacred First Nation symbol. So they wanted to come up with a symbol that could be painted on the ground, carved into a rock face, that would represent had been here, but wouldn't in any way disrespect or appropriate something that was more sacred and used as a symbol for another part of their culture. So we're working with her. We're hoping that we can, yes?
So with the new government's thing saying that it's everything is rubbish at Ontario Place, what's the...
Well, they didn't say that. They didn't say everything was rubbish. In fact, they said Trillium Park was staying. They also said there'd be no residential development. And the rest they've left nervously vague. And there had been many consultation processes before. And I happen to know that the previous government had entertained a number of proposals, which we never, as the public, we never got to see what those proposals were like. So my hope, and I love Ken Greenberg for Ontario Place for All, is to make sure that the government of the day understands what we do want to see. And one thing that the trust is going to make sure, one thing we want to see, is that that whole piece of land is incorporated as part of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail, that we haven't created a trail spur with Trillium Park, but that we continue to have public access throughout those lands. As it is now, it's super cool to go through there because you can come out the western side of it. Go ahead.
The provincial government has just opened requests.
Expressions of interest, yeah.
Yes, and it's a 45-day period. So if your organization wants to have input, you should say something at this point. The other thing is that the Trillium Park is 7.5 acres.
Yeah.
And the request for proposal doesn't protect Trillium Park per se. What it says is 7.5 acres of Ontario Place has to be park. It doesn't say that that has to stay. So
Thank you for that. Yeah, well, I think they would be very hard pressed. And it's not enough. The 7.5 acres was never enough. It was, for us, something deficient about the last plan, that it wasn't a commitment to maintaining the access. all the way through on the western side. So thank you very much for that.
Because that must have been a lot of money. It's been
30
a lot.
mil, yeah.
The, separate from Ontario Place, seeing as you're speaking to boaters, often boaters will cruise around on the lakes with bicycles. And have you got now, or would you consider putting signage at yacht clubs and marinas on the lakes that connect those clubs to the trail? So if a boater arrives at a club and ties up, they can take their bicycle from their boat and find the trail that way.
That would be an awesome program. I would absolutely consider that. We picked this cyclist because we're small. Our outfit is 2 people. And so we've really had to be very focused and very strategic about where we, but boaters were one of the key target markets for the trail and for the waterfront as early as the days of the agency, when it was recognized that boaters also have a tremendous impact on the local economies.
Right. So you might coordinate with the Provincial Sailing Association or something.
Okay. Thank you very much for both those points. These are just some cycling stats. I think we're getting a little late, so I won't take you into it, but cycling contributes a lot to the money. In the U.S., it's $133 billion. In Quebec, it's $1.2 billion. And in Ontario, it was $500,000. But it's something that they've only begun to measure, and there's a real appetite by Ontarians to pick up cycling. We're working with the CAA. Are all of you CAA members? They also have like a boating app, but they've got a bike app, and they are a big partner of the Waterfront Regeneration Trust. They have if you are a CAA member and you run into trouble on your bike, you can call CAA and get help.
Wow.
Even if you don't have your car. And it's, they're launching that. I'll give you a tip. You can't go beyond. It's going to be launched as a national program, so it's pretty exciting for them. This was a fun thing that we did with Google. We got the Google, see, David, he's an amazing guy that I work with. He's got that big camera on his back. That's the Google 360 camera. And we got it on, we received it on loan, and we did 100 kilometers of off-road trail that now you can see using Google. And I'll tell you, I was so excited, and we had a whole bunch of people that wanted to volunteer to carry it. It's 40 pounds, and the weight of it is really up high. It's a very difficult and physically demanding thing to do, but it was a lot of fun. And you can see it was, the kids were just like drawn to it. It was a Pied Piper. And then our annual bike tour. We've been doing it since 2008. For us, it was the Show Me Tour. Yes, the trail is there. Yes, it's signed. Yes, you can use the existing maps in order to go from one community to the next community. And to our community partners, it was a wonderful opportunity for them to showcase new developments on the trail. It's really been highly rated. Next year's route, we are going from Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury. We're taking 6 days in order to cover the distance. And, you know, based on 12 years of survey results, 97 will recommend the GWTA, 99 will recommend the area to friends and families, 79% felt safe on the route. This is important, especially when we're dealing with sections of the trail that are on road. We go back to our communities to point out the areas that our riders said were deficient or made them feel nervous. 98% said the trail provides a great cycling experience. And this one's important to my board, to me. 99% see it as an important, the trail itself is an important part of regenerating the Great Lakes. This last year's ride returned about $203,000 to the local communities that we passed. And thanks to the GWTA and some other promotional efforts that we've engaged in, we've measured that 45% of Ontarians know about the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. And we're very pleased about that. And it's a number that we have to grow. And what's even nicer is when you read what people say about their experience. I have a great video on the website that was taken by this lovely young woman named Stephanie Woodworth.
should take people, what does the trail mean to you? And it is very moving to see that a bike ride communicates those deep values to people as they go through the communities. As we know a hike would, as we know a boating trip would. Getting out there and seeing what the challenges are, seeing what's already beautiful is the best way to keep people interested in improving it over the long run. So that's the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. We're working away on expansion. After this last expansion, we'll be probably turning our attention more to the Rouge, working on those connections, measuring the impact, and trying to help our community partners find the funds to make major improvements to the trail. Get it off-road, get it through natural heritage. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Now, do we have any questions or comments? I have a couple of questions. One is, how conducive is the trail to hiking as opposed to biking?
I'm getting more and more people wanting to kind of treat it like an El Camino experience. And I go back to that highway number. If I were looking for a long distance hiking experience, I'd probably be more interested in the Oak Ridges Moraine or the Bruce Trail, because you would be doing a lot of hiking on the road. Now, if you only wanted about a 300K El Camino experience, I'd say the GTA area from Hamilton to Oshawa, that would be a pleasant walk. And it's not a hike in the way that you're going up and through rugged countries. You're going to see a lot of towns, but I would recommend that to somebody for a hike. The rest of the places, we can tell them where there are great spots to go hike, but hiking it end to end at this stage, I am a hiker, it would not be one that I would choose. Cycling it, gotta get on a bike, get an e-bike, they're awesome. Not those moped ones, the pedal assist ones, they're terrific.
And the second question is, what kind of facilities are there along the road for camping or for washroom facilities?
Yeah, so again, in the, Hamilton to Toronto, you have lots of facilities. And, every park generally has the public washrooms. And on our website, on the map, we locate many of those things. There's actually quite a few campgrounds on the more rural and northern stretches, and we have a list on the website that shows you where all the campgrounds are, and you can also find them on the maps. But it would be easy to do once you left the GTA area to find camping for every night of your stay.
Excellent. Yes, Jim?
One of my wishes is that the city of Toronto should be limited in size, but this is a politically dangerous remark to make. But the complement of that is to increase more of the green space, and groups like the Waterfront Trail are extremely important counter emphasis in society, and I compliment this whole effort. But I encourage you also to speak up more about green spaces in the city and throughout the province. This is our heritage, because we need the earth to live and water to live.
Great, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to let you know that we have some brochures here on, this is a guide and map, and then there's a cycle greenbelt route map as well. There are a few of these up at the front if you wish them. And I know our guests would be happy to talk to you afterwards. And I have a little token of appreciation for you from us.
Oh my gosh, I love
So another big round of applause for her. And coming up next week, we have John O'Dwyer, engineer, professor, Irishman extraordinaire, and he will present a humorous romp through Irish history, including St. Brendan's sailing to America. And following that, we have Martha Henderson, who will share her experiences with disabled sailing in Toronto. We actually have Martha coming twice. She's going to be talking first about the disabled sailing and down the road about her Olympic experiences. So with that, pipes up.
Good job.